Hi guys, Art here and welcome to this video. In this video I'll be doing a demonstration of this Macaw, I think that's how you pronounce it, in colored pencil. A friend of mine asked me if I wasn't going to draw any birds or something soon, so I thought, why not? And browsing around on Pixabay I found this picture, which I thought was pretty cute and funny and a bit of an interesting pose, so I decided to draw it. For this drawing I'm using the Fisher 400 paper and the powder blender from Brush and Pencil. This is only my second drawing using the powder blender from Brush and Pencil, so you'll see me just trying things out throughout the video because the first drawing I made was very small, so I still had a lot to learn. If you're not familiar with the powder blender from Brush and Pencil, it's a powder that allows you to blend colored pencil. The important thing is to use a non-absorbent paper and also using oil-based pencils that doesn't cling to the paper as much. So in most of this piece I was using my Polychromos and a few Pablo pencils when I started drawing the branch. Anyways, onto the drawing. As you can see, I'm scribbling a bit. I don't really care about the direction of my pencil strokes, which is something I normally care a lot about, but the powder blender just lifts everything off the paper if you apply a very light touch, so the direction of your pencil strokes doesn't really matter as much. As you can see, I'm tilting my pencils a lot, and this helps me apply very light layers so that you can easily blend it out. For the background, I didn't use a reference photo, only for the branch the Macaw was sitting on. The sky and the trees I made up myself because the Macaw was in this brownish setting and I thought this was such a colorful piece, so it needed a colorful background. The most important thing is that I wanted it to be blurry, so what I did is the green and the blue overlap a lot, as you can see here. This helps to create a blurry effect. One of the great things about the powder blender is how easy it is to create backgrounds. Something like this with Odorless Mineral Spirit would have taken me hours, and I mean hours. Probably 5 to 8 hours, but with this it only took 3 hours, I think. Also, creating a blurry background or a bokeh effect can be very difficult with Odorless Mineral Spirit or if you're not using any blenders at all, but it's pretty easy with the powder blender. At this point I began working on the branch in the foreground that the Macaw was sitting on. I wanted the part in the lower right corner to be in focus and the rest to be kind of blurred, but not really. When you work with the powdered blender, you want to have a lot of layers. You can use the textured fixative spray in between your layers, and this will help you achieve more layers, which can help you gain more vibrant colors. Before I started this drawing, I viewed a lot of other YouTubers' videos on how they made drawings with the powder blender, and the thing is that you don't see them spraying the layers, so I didn't realize just how many layers you could actually make. There is no such thing as spraying too many times with the texture fixative, so you just keep spraying and layering until you're satisfied. My one issue with the powder blender is that you have to work on a non-absorbent surface, so either a sanded paper or I know some people gesso down paper themselves. I don't really like working on such a rough texture. I don't feel like my pieces can be very detailed. And even though you can spray the textured fixative to gain more layers, at some points I felt like it wasn't possible to add any more colors, and I sprayed and I sprayed and I sprayed and nothing really happened. I know other artists use this paper, so I don't think it's the paper, I think it's my technique that's wrong. Anyways, I'm sorry about the very cropped footage here. I was trying out a new setting on my camera and I didn't realize that it wasn't filming the top and bottom of the picture. I thought it was. So it's gonna look like this for a while until I noticed it. I'm very sorry. Anyways, at this point I was almost done with his face. But what I wanted to note is that when you work on the feathers on a parrot or pretty much any other bird's head, the feathers on the head is a lot more fluffy and smooth than on the wings, for instance. So for me it didn't really matter how much I followed my reference photo. The important thing is that you have the idea of feathers and that the feathers are going in the right direction, but as you can see they're not very detailed. When I began working on the wing instead, it was important for me to have them detailed and really resemble the idea of a feather. And also that I had the feathers placed correctly. It's not exactly like my reference photo, but pretty much you see in the top that it's the smaller, rounder feathers, and then they kind of fan out and become longer and more rough throughout the wing. And that's important because that's what a wing looks like. So if you want the wing to be realistic, you have to do that. At this point, I'm pretty much just blocking in the colors. What was important for me was to have my values down, have my light areas and my dark areas, because some of the darkest areas were on the back of the feathers and in between the feathers of the wing, and having those down would be a great tool for judging the values of how light the lightest feathers were going to be. This is something I generally do on all drawings. Pretty much no matter what I'm drawing, I'll try to get the dark areas down first. Here it was the beak and the areas in between the wing. At this point you'll see me begin to bring in my Luminance pencils. The Luminance pencils are very creamy and pigmented, and the textured surface of the sanded paper really allows you to bring brighter colors on top of darker colors, which is usually not possible in colored pencil, so that's one of the great things with working on sanded paper and with powder blender. At this point I began adding a lot more detail, and I'm terribly sorry but I don't know the anatomical names of a feather, but I used white for the line down the middle of the feather, and then I toned it down with a cold grey and some blue shades. And then when I was done with the bottom feathers that were the darkest feathers, I began to work on the feathers on top. These were going to be a very light blue, so I felt it was a lot easier if I had the dark feathers down first, then it would be easier to separate them and define how light they were going to be. To avoid the top wings to look grey, because I think sometimes the light blue colors can become a bit dull and a bit grey, I will glaze over them with a turquoise, you'll see at times, and also a purple. So this was actually my first time drawing feathers like this. I've drawn a swan at a distance, but not individual feathers, and it can be very overwhelming. My best advice would be just break it down and tackle one feather at a time. Instead of thinking that you're drawing a feather, try to think of it as an abstract shape, and analyze the reference picture and break it into small parts. And again, here you'll see me working on the darker feathers before I move on to the top of the wing. Also, I did the back yellow feathers. What was important here is don't blend the blue into the yellow. It won't be pretty. So use a separate sponge. I use the soft tools. I think that's what they're called. Usually used for pan pastel. I use them for blending the powder blender, and I use one for the yellow parts and one for the blue parts. Now I'm just slowly finishing up the wing. I'm drawing in the top feathers, and once I'm done with that, I'll go over all my white parts with the titanium white powder and touch up texture. This is made by Brush and Pencil, who also makes the powder blender, and it's a mixture that you can paint over colored pencil that is archival, and this won't chip off like I've experienced with gel pens and acrylics. One of the great things about this is that you can work over top of it. So if you painted in something you didn't like, wait for it to dry and then you can just draw right over it. Also, if you burnished, you can apply the touch-up texture and then draw over it again. And here's the finished piece. I hope you like it, and I hope you maybe learned a few things about the powder blender. I know I did. If you did, please like this video, maybe leave a comment, and I'd love for you to subscribe so you won't miss another video. I'll see you soon. Bye!